The information shared on CNS Unfiltered is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any health or lifestyle changes. The views shared are those of guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Innate Clinical Nutrition or its affiliates. This episode includes affiliate links, which help support the show.
Hello and welcome. I am Jena, and this is CNS Unfiltered, a show where clinical nutrition specialists uncover what traditional medicine overlooks. Today, we've got another solo episode where I cover one of my own case studies. It's surprising to me how many people view their health as static. Yeah, you might get sick from time to time, but the expectation is often that once those symptoms subside, your body just goes right back to the way it was before. I can connect this explanation to the way traditional medicine has conditioned us to see and interpret health. Something I've talked about here before. We get sick, we expect an easy answer, a quick fix, a pill to stop whatever's happening. And then we can just go back to our lives and our habits exactly as they were. Like this sickness or these symptoms never even happened. A lot of us are so afraid of actual change. And this philosophy keeps us blind to the fact that we are living, growing beings. Health and wellness can't actually be static, even when it feels like it is. Your body, your systems that keep you alive, your mind, all are susceptible to changes. And this is inevitable. Not every change is necessarily a bad change. And embracing this only helps us see and support ourselves as we are. Health ebbs and flows as we move through the world. Some facets of our health we can control, and others we cannot. Understanding this fluidity and supporting where your health is at right now is how you can achieve true wellness and alignment. Today's case is all about the ebb and flow. In this episode, I'm examining one of the most severe yeast cases I have ever seen in my practice, in any of my practice. I answer all the same questions that my guests usually answer for their own case studies. You'll see what my client's symptoms were, how traditional medicine was involved or left off, and what protocol I used to help her get back to her life. Maybe not the way it was before, but to move forward into a healthier future. Stay tuned. Hello, this is Jena Salisbury, and welcome to another solo podcast. Today, we're jumping back into the gut, and we're going to be discussing yeast, specifically Candida albicans. So, Candida albicans is one of the first yeast, and usually the only yeast that traditional medicine will test for if they test. And so, a lot of times, yeast is not something that traditional medicine will look at. I can't tell you how many times I've done stool tests. We start treating something and then they have a yeast flare up. They go to the physician and they give them more antibiotics instead of like a diflucan or whatever. And that was more earlier in my practice. I have safeguards now and in different systems so that that does not happen, but it happens with other clinicians, right? I teach a lot of clinicians and CNSs. And so that's something that is just what happens in practice. And so for this client, she had come with some crazy gut issues, a lot of histamine responses, couldn't sleep, but was extremely tired during the day. She was a nurse and couldn't really keep her eyes open during the job, and that's an issue, right? And she had known that she's had gut issues and she's battled yeast, Candida, for a while now. And so traditional medicine left off with just the cycle, medications. And at this point, she wasn't even feeling better after them, right? There was no relief. And that's usually what happens because nothing's done to repair, nothing's done to restabilize, nothing's done to recolonize. And so every time we go through a kill off, one piece of a protocol, then we're going to actually do some more damage. If that person is super healthy prior, they eat really well, they're sleeping really well, then the body's designed to repair. And so some people can repair just fine, never skip a beat. Awesome. And some people cannot. And we have to know right off the rip if we are dealing with yeast. Yeast is an opportunistic bacteria. And what that means is that if it did not have the opportunity, it would not be there. Now, when I say that, how I'm looking through that as a clinical nutritionist is the immune system is the number one thing that usually keeps yeast down. Good bacteria will be the second, then bad bacteria. And so when we see that yeast is a forefront, I know immune system is off. I know that hormones are probably off or probably estrogen dominance because yeast loves estrogen. I already know we're probably not clearing and detoxing because they create biofilms and they create this little nest inside of your gut, for survival, right? You're their host. They're trying to survive. Human nature, or not human nature, nature. And so I know our system is already very compromised, and those pieces need to be addressed before we can do anything with the Candida. Of course, I did a stool test. Nothing else was too crazy. But when I tell you this was the largest yeast infection I had ever seen on paper, I am not exaggerating. Knowing that yeast creates biofilms, knowing that they could be elusive. There are times where I've seen yeast with the secretory IgA right there in the middle saying, nothing. I've also seen it where, there's other opportunistic bacteria, we'll say Klebsiella or E. coli or something along those lines, Citrobacter, which are the primary um, pathogens at that time. And Candida or yeast will actually go secondary to them too. So those numbers will be nice and low. But as soon as you remove the bigger contender, that E. coli or Klebsiella or whatever, now that yeast says, ooh, this is my opportunity, and it's going to try to take over. But yeast is always secondary. So that's something just to kind of keep in mind. Yeast is always secondary. All right. So we did a stool test, and her Candida number was at a 30. To put that into context, I'm pretty sure it does, as far as the testing goes, it doesn't like it over a 0.9. Anything to me over like a 2, especially when it's a chronic situation, is very long rooted. There's biofilms. And if there's biofilms, then when you read that test, you also know that you're only seeing the amount of scavengers, right? So they're going to create this biofilm, this little nest, invite all their friends into the party, and they're just going to hunker down away from the immune system, away from being attacked, and they're going to let out the scavengers, right? They're going to go check the environment, check the bad bacteria, check the good bacteria, check the immune system, check for food. So you're only seeing a tip of the iceberg. So even for me to see a 2 or a 3, I say, okay, we're going to eventually have to handle yeast, especially if there's symptoms. I'm already gearing my mind that after I eliminate some of these bigger contenders, we're going to have to shift gears from bacterial killing to yeast killing and immune system modulating. When I see it at a 30, poor woman, okay, this is a super chronic situation. Her mucosa is already extremely damaged. We're already in a predisposition that has a lot of complications involved with it. Yeast can elude. Yeast, one of the reasons it's so hard to take care of is because it can change into a few different forms, like a circle form, a rod form, for different things, right? Different forms for mating, different forms for being dormant, being active. And not all of them are addressed with herbals or the medication, to be honest. And the Candida diet, so nutrition, right? Everyone's probably thinking, food first, do that Candida diet. But I'll tell you the truth. I'm going to be honest. I have not recommended the Candida diet since probably my 3rd year practicing nutrition. And I'll share my reason. I will tell you my secrets. Because they create biofilms, because they are not going to die if you starve them. They're just going to go dormant. Or they create the biofilms and they can still reproduce and they can still suck out of your bloodstream, get their nutrients, and they're going to still proliferate underneath their safeguard. So you can do this very restricted Candida diet and you'll feel good. You'll get energy back and you're going to feel good. But the catch is, as soon as you put some of that food back in and the Candida is like, whew, great, it's over. We got food again. It relets everyone out the party to eat and is back with vengeance. And then you're stuck in a cycle, and that's rough. And I will not put my clients through that anymore, right? That is what you're taught, and that is what I did. And then as soon as I started really working with it, I said, that is not what I'm going to do anymore. I now look at the gut like I'm playing Risk with my brother. But when it comes to the Candida, right? I want them vulnerable. When you're playing Risk, we say, how do we sneak attack, right? How do we get them? And if starving them out isn't going to work, yes, they're living organisms, but it's not going to work, then I need to catch them and they're vulnerable, right? You don't want to push them into hiding. You don't want to change their diet and then push them into hiding and then give an anti fungal or even a herbal and think that you made a difference. It's a waste. And at that point, you're really just causing more damage to the mucosa. There should never be a kill off at that point. The number one thing that has to happen is mucosa repair and immune system stabilizing and repair, getting rid of those other contenders, balancing, and time first before, right? Build your field, build your army. And your army is really the body to take care of the yeast. Once the yeast is gone, right, you have a very limited time frame to repopulate because it's still going to be there and it's still going to be opportunistic. But again, it's secondary. So at this point, you can kind of switch into a crowd out theory if you do it correctly and rebuild quick enough and you dance with yeast. Yeast is a different kill off protocol. It is not something I normally hit really hard, really fast. It's something you dance with. But for this client, I bring her up because I had to step out of so many of my traditional lines that I do and I have done for the last over a decade of my practice, right? Those systems for this client were not going to be enough. Nutrition was not going to be enough. Herbs were not going to be enough. Supplements to help her sleep and help her detox were not going to be enough. And she was too compromised to really do things that were going to make things worse, right? But we always have to know that there's, especially for complex GI clients, there is going to be a Herx reaction. More than likely. I do set up my protocols to where I minimize that greatly. But for someone at a 30 with Candida, we have to go through it. And if you hit that too hard, too long, that, especially without detoxing, that toxic load is going to go so high it can put her in the hospital. And that's something that I was not willing to do. So we prepped the system, right? We prepped it, the immune system, the microbial. I put in Saccharomyces boulardii, right? Start breaking down those biofilms. I put in some biofilm disruptors. I put in some binders to start binding it out and to start binding up all the LPSs or endotoxins that are released by the Candida. Seeing if I can open up the detox pathways, get the body unlocked and get flow. Number one, get flow, get it unlocked, shift the narrative to where you have the systems to support you. Right now, Candida address the systems to support itself, right? It's a living organism and you are their host. So we have to look at it in that manner. A way that I address this very differently than I would have in the past is I messaged her prescribing physician, shared the testing, shared what we were doing, and I asked for nystatin. So on the stool test that I used with her, it also comes back and it tells you what antimicrobials or what herbs, or in this case, diflucan or nystatin, is susceptible, is resistant. So you kind of know where your tool case is going to be best showcased. And so nystatin was 100%, where all of the herbals only hit a 60. So I knew I had to do a super therapeutic for super long time if I went into herbals, and this was going to take a long time. When I say a long time, I'm thinking 6 months to a year of this dance. Kill, repair, bring it out of hiding. We do the Candida diet at some points. So we do starve it. We don't want that growth. We feed it, we kill it, right? So I have a system that works. But I wanted something with 100% efficacy. And so I reached out to her physician, our paired physician, and asked for nystatin. She gave the nystatin. I prepped all around it. We did originally a month. During that nystatin month, she was feeling amazing. Great. At the end of the month, she was starting to get some acid reflux. She was starting to get some burning in the stomach. And that's because nystatin is just hard. It is hard on the system, which is why I like herbals, right? But you have to really clinically think through that because herbs have a lot of side effects also. And so after a month on it, getting off of it, a month of repair, you can just tell that we were just still battling it. It was trying to repopulate. And when it tries to repopulate, right? Like if we go to war, you best bet we're going to want to retaliate, right? It doesn't matter who, but you're going to retaliate. And so there's going to be a flare up, right? There's going to be some damage that's happening during that time. And so that's what was happening. For her, it started being skin rashes, fatigue, and a lot of nighttime anal itching to the point where it just kept her awake. So after a month, she was feeling better, but definitely not 100%. Maybe we're at a 30% difference. The itching, it would come in waves now. So it wasn't like a chronic every day, but it was coming in waves and the severity wasn't really gone. She did have a little bit more energy. She wasn't falling asleep at the job anymore. Stools were going, back and forth. They weren't fully constipation, diarrhea like they were prior. They were kind of somewhere in the middle, weren't normal yet, but they weren't as extreme as before. So you're definitely in the right path. But with her job, with a night shift, with poor sleep, with poor dietary from the high stress and the low energy, I knew that we were just going to slide right back in, just, from talking and coaching and understanding where she is at in her personal life, in her work life, in her mental life. And that matters. That matters so much. And so after addressing that, and I didn't want to let her go, right? It was coming back. Our job was not done. 30 is a massive number. And I wanted to make sure we did it long enough to dot our I, cross our T, and to really resolve this with me. Went back to the physician. Physician and I had another conversation where the physician recommended a 3-month course. Woo-wee! And so coming from someone who has never called in a nystatin before, to come into a month and to come into a 3-month, I had to breathe that out. But it was a wonderful collaboration because she wasn't doing nystatin alone, right? She had me. She had the safeguards. She had the detoxing. She had the liver support. She had the binders. She had the biofilm disruptors. She had everything to minimize the side effects and to optimize repair, replenishment afterwards for rebalancing of the system. And that is when I believe a 3-month or even a 1 month of a nystatin in this aspect is used appropriately, right? When it's being used in conjunction and supported all the way around, not just a one kill off piece, right? I say this all the time, but the kill off piece is usually the smallest part of the rebalancing of the gut. This one tiny little piece that kind of comes in the middle, but it's not the beginning and it's not the end. After going through, it was a pretty emotional case because it hurt, right? She didn't feel good after a month. The acid reflux, the food had to change again. Even though she was feeling relief in other places, is damaging in others. And then to mitigate all of that and to keep up with the repopulation and the immune system, it's a lot of supplements and it's just hard. It's hard to follow a supplement regimen that is there to do work, right? It's not like daily here, just take this for support. Like, no, we are using supplements to do work at therapeutical dosings for reasons, and they kind of need to be used accordingly. Along with food changes, along with the job stressors and just life and a family, it is a lot. So many times came on crying, right? Release. How am I going to do this? Where are we going to go? But also every time it was getting a little bit easier and a little bit easier, a little bit easier. Every time, I'm saying every month. So every time we met every month, we met every 3 weeks. By the time we were ending that 3 months, we did a month of just great therapeutical repair. The only thing that was left was slight anal itching sometimes. Energy was better. Sleep was better. She quit her nighttime job, found a daytime job because that was a huge component of the healing. And for her, it might even been the number one thing that switched her success. I don't even think it was the nystatin. It was the alignment of the body's natural rhythm, the natural circadian rhythms, the body's innate wisdom of how it functions to detox, build repair, build immunity, and to rebalance the system, to actually eat when digestion is optimal, right during the day, not through the night when your body should be detoxing and clearing. The lifestyle was not aligning with the system of what the system needed to do to support the body in the elimination of the Candida or the clearance of the LPSs or the rebalancing. So I do feel like that was a key part to her coming out the other side. Um, the itching, I did not feel that after 4 months at this point of a nystatin and, of course, we were repairing and everything during that it was still a candida or that I still wanted to kill. Itching can also linger as a histamine response from a forward feeding cascade of the immune system. It can also come in from healing, right? When your skin heals, when your mucosa heals, sometimes that can itch. Um, and now we can also look at different bacteria because the nystatin doesn't go after bacteria. And usually if there is a weakened mucosa, they're going to fight for residency. So king of the mountain, here we go. And then I just supported the system, supported healing, supported the immune system, supported the good bacteria, supported detox, right? To get all that moving. And eventually it has tapered. It has gone away. She feels better. Energy's better. Stools are better. You know, I don't feel we're at 100%, right? Like that life did this huge turnaround, but at least 80 to 90. And again, there's nothing that takes the place of time. So the more she gets on board with the diet and the longer she does the repair and the more she adds in the fermented foods and the good bacteria naturally that fight off the yeast and keep it at bay, doing the foods that naturally bind and naturally, break down biofilms so it can't repair. Like that's the maintenance piece. And we can't forget the maintenance piece because our body is a huge machine. Like you have to change the oil in your car, and that's a pretty simple machine compared to the human body, in my opinion. And so to think that there is not an ongoing maintenance to your predisposition for your body to stay healthy long term is kind of silly. And maybe that's the myth I would like to debunk today is just because you did the gut repair, just because you did the kill off, doesn't mean that you get to do whatever you want with your health and expect it to stay that way. It's information, right? It's information on where the body's predispositioned. Is information on what the body needs for healing or repair or for longevity. And it's important that you keep that in mind as you maintenance the body. Do you need to be on gut repair supplements and all of these things forever? Oh, God, no. No, the name of the game for a supplement is to be used as a tool to get a job done supplementally, time being, and then it's gone. And ideally, food takes over, lifestyle takes over. Other modalities like massage, lymphatic massages, and that kind of stuff to keep the body flowing, keep the immune system down or from activating, those are now the lifestyle pieces for long-term maintenance. And to me, that is success, right? Success is not getting to 100% because that's never going to happen. It just won't. So success, especially with real complex gut issues like this, something that has stemmed since childhood, right? She's had yeast infections since she was a child through her high school and college. Like it is so integrated in her cellular being that the chances that it's 1,000% gone and the system's going to run without it, I don't think that's going to be true. But there's things we can do to keep it in check. There's things we can do to keep the immune system, to keep the candida in check, things we can do to keep the good bacteria and the good bacteria fed and colonized. So its candida is no longer have an opportunity, is cannot be opportunistic. These are the maintenance pieces that we think of and how we set up the diet long term. I started off by saying, like, I don't switch up the diet from the beginning. You will not catch me doing a candida diet off the rip if I see, someone with candida. I do the supplements. I do the work, right? I want the body to shift very quickly, depending on the person, but ideally we want to get those shifts and then food takes over. Food is the forever. Food is the maintenance. But in the very beginning of a gut repair, we have to know that food is probably only getting digested and absorbed and utilized maybe at a 20%, depending on the person, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 75. But the truth is that it could be actually causing more harm than good. We will never get to a therapeutic amount of what we're trying to go after. And that food first, is extremely important, but it's not always going to be the way it goes. And for this particular gut patient, it was supplements first, the rebalancing because their gut was not working. And now we move all into just a little bit of supplements if needed, But other than that, it's food, it's maintenance. There's one thing to focus on. Like I mentioned, I really wanted to share because it was a time that I had to really humble myself too and come to the physician and be like, hey, we got to work together on this one and really keep our eyes on this client together. And it's wonderful. It was wonderful to have that collaboration and to give her something that, we trialed and did work. And I was able to take care of the client still before, during, and after for success. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in today for this episode of CNS Unfiltered. This week, think about how you can accept and support yourself as you are now, supporting what your body needs, what your spirit needs, what your health needs right now in this moment can help you plan for a healthy future. Check back next week for a regular episode and stay tuned for more solo episodes with some of my own clients in the future. For more information about my practice, Innate Clinical Nutrition, go to innateclinicalnutrition.com to see some of the programs I offer or schedule a phone call with me or give me a follow at Innate Clinical Nutrition on Facebook and Instagram. If you're a future or current CNS practitioner, functional medicine practitioner, medical professional, or even a current or former functional medicine patient, we want to hear from you. If you have questions, comments, or success stories, send us an email at cnsunfiltered@gmail.com for a chance to be featured on a future episode. If you're a clinical nutritionist or other functional medicine practitioner and you're interested in being interviewed, click on the link in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss a new episode. And share this with a client, colleague, or a classmate who might need to hear it. Once again, I am Jena Salisbury, and remember to listen to your gut.